Well, welcome back to Puck Watching. This man that we have here needs no introduction, but he's a former defenseman and captain for your St. Louis Blues, a former Norris Trophy winner for the NHL's best defenseman, a Hart Trophy winner for the NHL's most valuable player. He's a Stanley Cup champion, not with your St. Louis Blues, unfortunately, but an NHL Hall of Famer as well. We're incredibly honored to welcome Chris Pronger to the podcast. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, boys. Thank you. How's everybody doing?
Oh, we're doing fantastic. And
great
such
that
an
you're
honor.
here. Mm-hmm.
Such an
All right.
honor.
All right.
First, I mean, you were posting on your Instagram earlier that you had a big win in the Kelly Chase Community Cup golf
Huge
match.
Win. One of my biggest victories of late.
I was just going to say, I mean, where does that rank in your accomplishments across your entire career and life?
I don't win too many golf events, so it was nice to play in an event and actually win it for a change. So we had a fun group. We had a really good player with us, not myself. So that makes it much easier when you're playing in a scramble and a guy can bomb it out there 300 down the middle. It makes life a lot easier on us guys that spray it off the tee.
For sure. And I'm sure you got some distance though with it. So I'm sure you help out when that ball just gets straight out there in the fairway, I'm sure.
When needed, when called upon, yes.
When called upon. Okay. So Chris, I guess winding back the clocks back a little bit. So you grew up in Dryden, Ontario, and you had a junior career and then you turned pro. But you had a pretty big hockey mad family, and your brother Sean played pro as well. So I guess how did he kind of influence, and your whole family influence your intensity on the ice and kind of your identity that you kind of had going into the league in your younger years especially?
Yeah, well, my brother wrote a book about it. It's called The Journeyman, about his episodic rise and fall in the game of hockey and his tips and turns and his career. While I was traded 5 times in my career, his was a little rockier than mine. He played on 14 teams in 10 years, and he played in all walks of life, not only in the NHL. So, but growing up, we obviously battled quite hard, and it was either we wound up fighting each other because we were on opposite teams, or we wound up fighting each other because we were on the same team and somebody didn't pass somebody the puck, or somebody got mad that something happened in the game. So it didn't matter at some point during the course of any game, whether it was road hockey up at the local outdoor rink or at the local Dryden Arena, somebody was dropping the gloves and fighting one another. So there were countless bloody noses for yours truly. But I think I'll give him a little credit for bringing out the edge in me. But we used to always watch Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday nights, and we would it was obviously pretty cold in Canada and in my hometown, so we would play with a tennis ball and get our floor hockey sticks and just dump the puck, so to speak, into the corner. And there was a nice sofa nearby, so we would slam each other up into the wall of the basement, and then chuck one of us would get chucked into the sofa and go for a ride.
Oh my gosh.
If you will. And it was those are fond memories of the game of hockey, though. We'd sit and watch 20 minutes of Hockey Night in Canada. Then we would play for 20 minutes while they resurfaced and got everybody cleared up. And then we'd go back to watching the game and kind of go back and forth, and a lot of great memories.
Yeah, I mean, the best that Nick and I can relate to that is maybe some shinny hockey tournaments in the basement. But other than that, I can't really relate to that on any level in our family. We are not a hockey family. But that's
Those
awesome.
were competitive, though.
They were competitive. They were absolutely competitive.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that you've talked about it on some other podcasts, that when it comes to your early rise and from juniors to pro, that you kind of felt like that your growth was it took a little bit, like about 3-5 years was what you were saying. And so it you initially were on the Hartford Whalers, drafted by them, and then get traded to the Blues, and we'll get into that in a second because that has a fun story with it. But
it does.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of curious, like, how do you attribute that growth period from you when it comes to Hartford versus coming into St. Louis, then finding your groove?
Yeah, I think, I was obviously a big kid, but still a kid at heart, I guess, and was a little immature as it relates to how to be a pro. Was kind of pushing back against the man, trying to tell me where to go, what to do, how to do it, all that stuff. And, there was a lot of friction in, trying to learn the ropes and learn how to play the game at the NHL level. And as you said, it took me a long time, 2 years in Hartford, being booed relentlessly by the fans. A lot of a turbulent marriage in Hartford, if you will. A lot of ups and downs, and it was difficult. Not gonna lie to you. And then obviously the trade here to St. Louis. I was super excited and ecstatic to come to the Blues, and was all fired up, and did not realize the magnitude of the trade here in St. Louis. Did not realize how popular Brendan Shanahan was. So I kind of walked into a little bit of a hornet's nest, not knowing kind of the temperature of the fan base, if you will. And Mike Keenan put me in my place real quick, as did the fans. And it was a good 6 months of being booed, and 6 months of some tough love and learning how to be a pro, and, getting a chance to watch the likes of Brett Hull and, for a while, Wayne Gretzky, and obviously Al McInnes and Grant Fuhr, and some of the Hall of Fame names that I got to play with. And you start realizing what it takes to be a pro, the consistency that it takes, the effort, the preparation, both on and off the ice. And just having that great group of veterans around me really kind of helped me come into my own. And as I mentioned, when Gretzky got here, he really kind of took the focus off of me, and the fan base was so excited to have him here that all eyes went to him, and everything was off me. So that it kind of relieved a lot of pressure from my game, and I was already starting to trend in a better direction and playing a little bit better, but getting the attention off of me and really being able to focus on my game and getting better shape and learning how to play more consistently and bring it every night, I think was a big part of my turnaround here in St. Louis.
Yep. No, that makes sense, Chris. And you said 6 months of booze. Did I hear that correctly?
Ballpark. It may have been 7,
wow.
But we'll
that's almost a full season.
We'll give it was almost a full season. You are right. I think was when Gretzky got here, they stopped booing because they didn't want to make him feel bad.
No, I get that. And then you fast forward the clock with the Blues, and we're in the 99-2000 season, and you become the second defenseman ever to win both the Hart and Norris Trophy. And the only other person to do that was Bobby Orr, and you're an elite company there. And you beat, I think, famously Jaromir Jagr by 1 point.
I did.
And that. How do you reflect on that season? It was one for the ages. No one's done it since.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
It was a great year. We had a great year. Not a great playoff, but we had a great year.
Yeah.
And everything just kind of fell into place that season. I played with the checking line a lot. It was Scott Pellerin, Craig Conroy, and Blair Atchingham. And we were tasked with shutting down the opposition's top line. Those guys played phenomenal. I think Conroy was up for the Selke that year. I won the Norris and the Hart. And somebody else was up for an award that year. So it was just everything went perfectly well. There was no adversity. We just kind of cruised through the year. And then we got into the playoffs, and we fell apart. We hit some turbulence and some adversity. And I think having not gone it through this season, we didn't know how to respond. We really looked shocked at times, and we weren't able kind of recalibrate and get ourselves back on track, and lost a heartbreaking Game 7. But the funny story about the Hart Trophy is that season, Jaromir Jagr missed 3 weeks of the year due to injury. And the reason that I won the Hart Trophy that year is the Pittsburgh writer voted for me for first and him for second.
Oh,
so that put me over the top with points.
Oh, wow.
Votes, if you will.
Yeah.
For the trophy.
I did not know that, but we talked to Jamal Mayers for a little bit when we first got started, and he mentioned the San Jose series and how much of a bummer the whole team took that. And yeah, it seems like it still sits with most of the roster. At that time. So
absolutely. There's a very sharp knife stuck in my side with every playoff series loss, and that one. That's one of many that stand out in losses that kind of dig at you, because you coulda, shoulda, woulda. We had such a good team, and you wonder if we get over the hump and get past that little piece of adversity, where do we get to? And we'll never know.
Yeah. And to backtrack a little bit on the Norris and Hart Trophy award-winning season for you, do you see a defenseman? Because we have elite defensemen in the league right now. You know, you have Makar, you have Fox, you have Hughes. Do you see any of those players, or any others for that matter, that could maybe get both of those awards in a season? Or is it made for forwards, for centers, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think the only two guys that could possibly win it of the current crop of defensemen would be Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar. I think Makar a little less likely because of McKinnon.
Yeah.
And just what he provides, and they almost cancel each other out. And then with Quinn Hughes, just what he does for that team night in, night out. It's he's the guy, and we'll see what their team looks like this year if they get off to a good start and he stays healthy. He's pretty banged up last year and still had a fantastic year. So it'll be interesting to see. They live and die with how he plays and what he brings to the table. So it'll be interesting to see. But he would be the guy that I think you would have to watch, that just what he does offensively, defensively, special teams. He kind of does it all for them.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that, Chris, is that the weird thing is that, you were the last defenseman to win the Hart Trophy, but not only that, but you were the last one to even be nominated within the top 3 since that 2000 season. And that required a little bit of research, by the way. But still, when I'm
glad you did it, because I didn't know.
I mean, when I noticed that, there were defensemen that were obviously voted, but they didn't end up in those top 3 nominations. So that almost flabbergasted me, because there's been plenty of defensemen over the last 20 plus years that have definitely been in that conversation, but ultimately didn't get that. So, and Makar has like a 90-point season, and Quinn Hughes has similar seasons. So it's just interesting to see how the league doesn't always value the defenseman over somebody like a goalie from last year with Hellebuck, or obviously some elite forwards like Matthews, McKinnon, McDavid, and all of that. So that just flabbergasted me, Chris.
Yeah, I think again, it's the media that votes on that award, so they don't value defensemen. And you look at the guys that were up for it this year. There's probably 2 or 3 guys that should have been nominated for the Hart Trophy this past year. There's only 3 spots. It's difficult, and I'm personally not a fan of when a goalie wins, because they don't play 82 games.
Right.
And so, it's kind of like a pitcher pitching once every 5 days. I'm not a fan of it personally, but there's enough guys that, whether they're forwards or defense, that you could take them off a team. And I understand, you have a year. Jose Theodore won it one year in Montreal. I think Carey Price was up for it. Obviously, Hellebuck won last year. It's not to take anything away from their seasons. He played really well, and then again fell apart in the playoffs. But
Right.
He had a phenomenal year, and so did Winnipeg.
I was going to ask you about that real quick, and you did kind of answer it, because I was a bit flustered as to why he won. I know he had a really good regular season, but going back to your point on him not playing a full season, and the expectation isn't for goalies to play a full season, obviously. Yeah. But when you balance it, do you ever think about, forwards only play, 20 minutes, 22 minutes a game, defensemen are, eat up maybe a little bit more ice time than forwards as well. Do you try to balance that as well when you're taking in goalie performance? Because I didn't think Hellebuck should have won either, but.
No, I would just look at it similar to the year I won. The guy didn't vote for Jagr because he didn't play all 82 games.
Right.
And we're talking about most valuable player to the team, most valuable player in the league, and et cetera. So there's a lot of metrics that people can look at, but at the end of the day, these, when you're talking about the top 3, top 5 players in the league in any given year, they're going to be, you're talking minutia in how well they played, whether it be against each other, statistically, all the rest of it. Or there's somebody that's just, some years McDavid or whomever is just light years ahead of everybody else, and they win.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that. And going a little bit back from that, I think talking about more of your time with St. Louis, and I'm curious because, obviously one of the best pairings in the whole NHL for a long time was you and McInnes. And then you obviously had Brett Hull on there as well during your years. You had Pavel Demitra in your later years. You had Pierre Turgeon and all those guys, and some elite players, and obviously Gretzky too for just about a half a season. So I'm just kind of curious just how cool it was to play with them and maybe what they taught you, because those are some outstanding players. And obviously you guys came up short a few times. And we talked about the frustration, but just some of the lessons that they taught you along the way, because you're a Hall of Famer yourself, but all those guys, and many of them have all Hall of Fame and careers themselves. So the lessons and what they taught you throughout your career, I'm just so curious.
Yeah, I think Al probably meant the most to my career and to me, just I was 21, he was 31, he'd been around a long time, obviously storied 10 or 11 years in Calgary and then coming to St. Louis, and just being able to watch how he prepared, how he handled the media, how he practiced, how he prepared for games, how he played, his consistency, all facets of the game, both on and off the ice, and ultimately met my trainer through Al, and ultimately had the same trainer for the rest of Al's career, and really just taking my fitness to the next level, my nutrition to the next level, and really going all in on making sure that no stone was unturned, and I was doing everything possible to take my game to that next level and use as much of my potential, as much as my skill set as I could.
Yeah. I think, and also another one that I didn't mention, and again, he also had a bigger career before he came to St. Louis, Grant Fuhr.
Yeah.
And I know you had a really interesting story with him about Grant Fuhr, about your plus minus bonus.
Yeah.
So enlighten the audience about this, because this was a hilarious story that I heard.
Yeah, Furzy was a piece of work, and you could always see him back there giggling through his mask. And so we get to the last game of the year. I had a big bonus for plus minus, and I think I was up by 3 on Larry Murphy at the time. And we're playing in LA, and Furzy lets in a muffin when I'm on the ice, and I look at him, I give him crap, and I'm like, what are you doing? You know what's at stake? And you can see his head's chuckling, and he's like, oh, you want me to let another one in? I'll let another one in. The game was meaningless for us.
Right.
We'd already established our position in the playoffs. They were out of the playoffs. So it was just a throwaway game. We needed to finish and get over with to end our regular season. And he's back there giggling and chirping me and having fun with me. But he's a piece of work. we always kept it interesting back there with Furzy.
Oh,
Another time, as people may or may not know, he was terrible handling the puck. Whenever the puck would get rimmed in, he'd always point the other side. And I'm like, thanks, Furzy. I know what's going over there. You are not coming out of your net to stop it. And one time the puck kind of dribbled into him. And I went over to the corner. I'm like, Furzy. And the puck hit me right in the chest.
Oh.
It was a beautiful pass. Nice sausage pass right off the blue note in my chest.
It's a good football pass.
Exactly.
Right the number.
And again, you could see his head bobbing as he was laughing as he hit me in the chest.
My God.
That's awesome. I do want to, so if we fast forward a little bit in the Blues tenure, it's 2005. You find out that you're traded to Edmonton. I believe the Blues, and correct me if I'm wrong, said mostly for cap reasons. And I wanted to make allegedly. Yeah. So after hearing that news, you find out you're traded to Edmonton. You have to go all the way up there and have a home base in St. Louis. And you also find out who the Blues got in return. And Eric Brewer sticks out as the guy that we got in return. How did you feel after that trade? Did you feel like it was a fair one? And how were the emotions, I guess, post trade to Edmonton?
Well, based on the two trades after that one, it probably wasn't fair value. Knowing what the other two teams that traded for me got in return or gave up in return. So probably not. But I had played with Brew in the 2002 Olympic team, and he was a good player too. I think he, like the same thing that happened to me with Shanny. I think he got the same treatment. Expectations were high. I was going out the door. He was supposed to fill a hole, and it's unfortunate circumstance for him to come into because he is a good player. But people are going to look at you in a different light and think it's apples to apples when it's just apples and oranges. And that can be difficult. And that's the hard part about trades, about professional sports, when expectations aren't set, whether it's by management or player. Kind of explaining through the media kind of the type of player you are, and kind of gives the fans a vision of what to expect. And if you're not talkative or you don't explain how you play, well, then they're going to listen to the media and be told what to think. And a lot of times, that can do you a disservice.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you were on so many different teams, yet you were such an unbelievable player. And I think a lot of the times now it's like you secure your elite guy and he's staying there for a long time. Yeah. So I think the interesting thing I was curious about was how you kind of manage with the different playing styles of each of these teams and the coaches, because you were on the Blues for a while and you went through Keenan, and then you had Quenneville for a little bit as well. And then you kind of go through these different teams with maybe some different styles and different coaching. So curious how that impacted all of your time, because I feel like it's got to be a little bit different team by team going from all those different places.
Yeah, to a certain extent. But I think, one of the things that I was excited about leaving St. Louis is that the teams that I was going to wanted my leadership and wanted me to be a leader in the locker room and with those various teams. And, I think it had run its course here in St. Louis, and, it was time for a change. Sometimes things, not everybody can have a 20-year career in one place. Right. Very few players get that ability or that opportunity. And, I had already been traded once from Hartford to St. Louis, so it's not like it hadn't happened before. But it was time. And I think going to Edmonton, with how they wanted me to play and the role. I didn't wear a letter in Edmonton. They already had a captain in Jason Smith. They already had a leadership group. They brought me in to help support those guys, and just play to the high level that they knew I could, and really focus on playing and leading by example with how I played, how I practiced in the gym and the locker room, and support those leaders that they already had in place. And I think that's why it worked out I think, so well in Edmonton with respect to just our team and the play is that those leaders weren't worried about me being there. They actually were happy for me to be there. They were excited for me to be there, and welcomed me with open arms, and knew kind of the relationship that I had, having played with Mac T, Craig McTavish in St. Louis, my first year there, and having played against Kevin Lowe for a couple seasons. So knew the GM, knew the coach, played against a couple of the assistant coaches we had. So, I had a great relationship with our coaching staff and management and stuff. So it was a very comfortable situation to come into. And just the way things were ending in St. Louis and going there, it was just a breath of fresh air and going somewhere where you were wanted, and they were kind of tapping into your knowledge and the way that you play the game.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, Chris. And I was going to ask too. You referenced briefly the playing style, known for your intimidating style, definitely a bruiser, but also an elite playmaker and great offensive talent as well. And I was trying to think back on a player that is in the league right now who is a bruiser, but also a very good playmaker as well. I'm trying to think, like Tom Wilson kind of comes to mind, where he can hit people on a whim, but also come back and have a great assist or score a goal. How is that play style like for you when you racked up 1,100 penalty minutes with the Blues alone, but you're also an elite playmaker? How did you balance that performance style within your game?
That's the tough part. There's an edge and a fine line, and a lot of times I cross that line.
Yeah.
Sometimes on purpose, and sometimes because I was mad. But I think that's the balancing act, and that's also, I think as we mature, as we get more comfortable in who we are and how we play, and all the rest of that, I think I got much better with managing my emotions and managing my physical style of play the older I got, and just understanding and learning when to do it, when not to, when to kind of pull back a little bit. I had a great relationship with the referees. They were always talking to me, bantering with me as maybe I began to escalate my physical play a little bit, and my stick got a little stronger in certain areas where maybe they wanted me to back off a little bit.
Yeah.
And so as I kind of learned that part of it and understood that dynamic a little bit better, I think that helped my play. I know coming out of the 04-05 lockout, I had heard by a number of well-known media members that I was going to be a fossil and I would not be able to play in the new rules of the NHL. And I would argue that I actually played better in the new rules than I did in the old rules, which just goes to show you how much those brainiacs understand the game.
Well, I think you got the new relationships with the referees, and yet you still have 1,100 penalty minutes, Chris. So I'm not sure.
Well, I did cross the line occasionally.
I'm sure. But now I think one of the craziest parts of your career, I think, and looking back at it for you, and it's probably not a fun thing to look back at, but those injuries, the 16 surgeries that you had, and just the constant dealing with all of those things. So I'm just really curious, just kind of how you found yourself in those situations. And it sounds like that you really prioritize, though, your diet and your nutrition, yet you keep kind of facing these situations. So is that kind of an outgrowth of just your physical play, and, as Nick was saying, just your bruiser type and mentality, and you not wanting to weigh away from that? Or is that just unfortunate circumstances that happened over time in the league?
Yeah, there were a few, injuries that were from physical play, and there were a few that were just freak incidents, freak accidents. You're gonna hurt your knees. I had one knee injury that didn't bother me playing, and I had surgery, and then it bothered me playing. Tore my ACL But, I broke my arm by blocking a shot by my own teammate. It shattered my, I had a nightstick fracture on my arm.
Friendly fire.
I blocked a shot just coming towards me, and I went and put my hand up and kind of peeled back the bone on my hand, and it was kind of a freak incident. So there's, my back, I got hit with a stick and broke my jaw. Obviously got hit in the eye. There's a bunch of them that were freak. Some of the ones, the hockey related ones, a couple broken feet where I had to get pins put in, and there's things that happen, and then there's wear and tear. Like I think my back went out because of the wear and tear and just playing a lot, and ultimately that was the thing that kind of wore down. But injuries are a part of the game. There's a cost to playing an aggressive style, and frankly, I wouldn't change anything. The 1 year in Anaheim, they were like, "Wow, why don't you back it off a little bit?" And because I broke my toe 1 year there, and something else happened, and I'm like, "Listen, I only know how to play one way. I only want to play one way." And I gave them a week. I said, "Okay, well, I'll pull back on it, and we'll see." And I think I got halfway through a game, and I'm like, "This is not working. I have to go all out. I have to play the way I play, and I need to be all in and play aggressive, or I'm not going to be able to play to the same level."
Yep. That makes total sense. And I was going to ask you too, Chris, your number 44 was retired by the Blues in 2022. And I know you referenced the Boo Birds that we already talked about previously in the interview. But aside from that, you did mention how you thought the city really did feel like home. And what's one of those personal moments from the time with the Blues on or off the ice that still makes you smile and still makes you think, hey, St. Louis is home, and it's one of the best places, or the best place I've been throughout my career and post-career?
Yeah, I just think when you go through something like I did, getting booed for a whole season, virtually a whole season, and you're being able to come out on the other side and then be revered and called a legend, and thought of in very high regard by all the fans and people in the community, I think you have a greater appreciation for the fan base and the people in the city, and kind of what they ultimately mean to you because of what you've gone through. And I came here a kid and left a man, and there's a lot of scars along that journey, and they were a part of a lot of that, good and bad. And I wouldn't, as I mentioned, I would not change anything for that happened to me or transpired throughout the course of my career. It all happened for a reason. It all helped me grow and develop and evolve into the person I am now. And we learn a lot of things. We go through a lot of adversity. And as I always say, adversity is a gift. It's how we grow and develop and get better. And I think a lot of times when we get comfortable, we don't challenge ourselves, and we don't step out of our comfort zones. And I think towards the end of my time here in St. Louis, I think things got a little stagnant. I think I was probably getting frustrated with the team, frustrated with the losing, and I think it was probably best that I move on. And ultimately, they traded me. And but when you look back on your tenure, and I look at my career, half of it was here in St. Louis. A lot of great memories. You mentioned off the top, did not win the cup here, which still pains me to this day. But having seen them get it in 2019 was really special.
Yeah, and I'm sure, and we'll merge this into two, so that you win it with the Ducks. And I think one of the more interesting things what you said was just how elite that Ducks team was. And I was 2 years old when that happened. So Chris, I don't want to make you feel old at all.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Yeah, okay, good. But I wasn't really a huge hockey fan when this was happening, obviously. So like, how did that team separate from all the different teams that you played with. And it's not like that you didn't go to the Cup final with other teams. You went with Edmonton and you went with Philadelphia later in your career too. So that defining element, that what it took to win, what do you think was that, Chris?
Yeah, I just think our belief in one another, our willingness to do whatever it took. We could the fun part about that team is we could play any way you wanted. We were tough, we were skilled, we could defend, we had goaltending. It didn't matter. And that was the fun thing, is we could just go out and have fun, and we all knew what we were there for. From the moment I got there to training camp, it was, we are here to win a Stanley Cup. And that was the mission from day one. And everything that we did throughout the course of the year was around winning the Stanley Cup. How we prepared, the way that we played, the styles, the different styles, and evolving and changing things and tweaking things. And, obviously Randy Carlisle and our coaching staff did a great job of preparing everybody in that regard. And Berkey making key trades and acquisitions, and, ownership buying in. And, it as we know, it all starts at the top and everything funnels down. And everybody from the owner to management to the coaches to the players to the training staff, everybody lived and breathed with winning, and ultimately the big prize and the Stanley Cup. And I just seeing the emotion on some of the front office staff that didn't think it was a possibility, or they hadn't had a lot of success in Anaheim, and for us to go on that run and ultimately fulfill our mission and our goal of winning the Stanley Cup, and just to see the raw emotion of them out on the ice with the cup. And everything that they did in the office was about helping us on the ice. And when you get total buy-in like that, good things can happen, and they certainly did for us in Anaheim.
Yeah, I'm totally with that. And then when it comes to 2019, you look at just the way that the Blues won it, and I would argue that the style that the Blues played, maybe you couldn't really match that into what you were doing with Anaheim, where they kind of stuck to a certain style throughout all of their kind of 2019 run. So, and I just don't think that they could have played all of different ways like that Ducks team. Like maybe they just weren't that skill level team that yours was. So, I mean, when you saw that Blues run and you were in St. Louis for a lot of that, walk us through kind of what you saw in that team versus kind of your ultimate Cup champion years in Anaheim.
Yeah, it's funny. I was at the game against LA when Mike Yeo got fired.
Oh, man. So you were there from the beginning.
And boy, oh boy, did they suck. They were terrible. They were rotten. And just to see when Chief Kane comes in, he's trying to get them to believe that he's trying to build back their confidence. They were a beaten down group. And it took a while. They lost for, 2 or 3 more weeks. And, ultimately even getting into, December, mid Christmas time, Binnington comes in, they start mixing in some wins, and then he just goes on a heater. And the whole team, they went 16-2-1 or whatever it was to get back in the playoff contention. And then they just go on another run and make the playoffs, and then just started steamrolling teams, and just timely goals, big saves, overtime goals, and from the first line, the second line, they had balanced scoring throughout their lineup on the back end. They had players kind of come into their own throughout the course of the season and find their roles and really find their identity, their team identity. And then you could see as they were going through the playoffs, they were like a snowball going down a hill. They just got more and more momentum and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they got to the Boston series, and they just played bigger and bigger with each game. As the magnitude got higher and higher, they played better and better. And I was in Boston for that Game 7, and it was they were lights out. They just totally dominated that game. And the moments when Boston looked like they were tilting the ice a little bit, Binnington made some great saves, and St. Louis came back to tilt it back the other way and kind of level it off. And it was fun to see, and just to see Bobby Plager on the ice and some of the longtime Blues from the original days in '67 to be able to see them be a part of that was really special.
Mm-hmm. How did you feel, Chris, about this past season? Because the Blues were also not very good up until early February, and all of a sudden they rattle off 12 games in a row, setting the franchise record. You have some great players, obviously, but you don't have a McKinnon, you don't have a Makar, you don't have a McDavid, and it was a group effort, and a lot of defensemen stepped up. You had Broberg, you had Fowler. And they did something pretty unprecedented that no one really saw coming. They ended up squeaking into the playoffs. Did you get a little bit romantic with the 2019 team, just thinking about that and thinking about what they did last season? And how do you feel about this year too?
Yeah, I think they can use last year as a very good building block. I don't think anybody thought they'd make the playoffs, and they went on that run. I think it took, again, similar to when Chief came in. When Monty came in, it took the team a little bit of time for him to really instill his systems and get guys, figure out players, figure out roles and the identity and all the rest of that. And then I think, as you mentioned, in February, things really took hold, and timely goal scoring and great goaltending and all the ingredients that you need to go on a run like that. And then, get some timely trades, and then they get Snuggerud when the college season is over, and you get to see what he's going to be like. And so I think they've got a lot of opportunity this year, but they have to keep developing. They have to keep getting better. You look at where Robert Thomas and Kyrou were the young players. They're now the key veterans. Right. And you're rolling over off of the O'Reillys and players of that caliber. You got a veteran leader in Braden Shen. You've got, as I mentioned, Kyrou and Thomas, and now you got Holloway, and you've got Snuggerud, and you've got these neighbors. You got these younger players that are now going to need to be more consistent and night in and night out and provide that offense. And now they've had a taste of what the playoffs are like. Now they understand what it's going to take to get into the playoffs, the toll it's going to take, and then ultimately what it's going to take in the playoffs to get past that first round and ultimately continue to advance. So I think last year was a great lesson in what it's going to take. And now they have to take those learnings and apply them to this year and build on top of them and use that as the foundation, and then continue to kind of roll that ball down the hill again.
Yeah. So I guess with that, is that kind of for this year particularly, and we've talked a lot about with a couple of the preview episodes we've had here. So is this kind of more of the same from last year? Obviously, now you have a full season with Montgomery, so you have a little bit more permanence when it comes to the coaching staff and the way you're going to be playing. But is it kind of going to be a similar year when it comes to these guys need to kind of grow into their own, like Snuggerud and younger defensemen like Broberg and Holloway and on the forward side? Is it going to have to be another sort of growth year for them to where maybe the next season is the start where maybe you can be a consistent contender? Or is this kind of that consistent contender range that you would say that you see in the team?
Well, I think they need to be, I think last year, whatever standard they set last year, that needs to be the standard this year, and then go above that.
Right.
And, in this cap world, things can change quickly. And you've got Broberg up for a contract. You've got Holloway up for a contract. You got a lot of players that are due, whether it's raises or new contracts or however you want to look at it. Fowler's up for a contract after this year. So they've got a lot of optionality with respect to their lineup after this year. So again, players are playing for contracts. They're playing for pride. They're playing for the opportunity to win a Stanley Cup and the opportunity to make the playoffs again.
Right.
It's never a given. You could argue that last year they weren't supposed to make the playoffs, but they did.
Right.
So whose spot did they take? And is that team going to get better? And what did the teams around them do to get better? And so it's it's challenging to make the playoffs every year. But you look at the system that Monty instilled, you look at the coaching staff, you look at the players that they have, and the growth and development that you think they got last year, and now they have to build on that and continue to take it to that next level. You'd like to think they're a playoff team. You'd like to think they can go farther, but again, I think the first 20 games will kind of prove out, was last year a fluke? Are they really that good? Meaning, have these players really taken that next step and developed, or did they just catch fire and won a bunch of games in a row? And I think with Monty having a full training camp now, having full preseason, all the rest of that, I think the expectations and the roles that each player will fit into, I think has been talked about ad nauseum over the summer. And I think these players understand their roles, the identity, and the way that they need to play to help the St. Louis Blues be successful and not only make the playoffs, but make a run at the Stanley Cup.
Yeah. So when it comes to, I think one of the biggest off-season losses for the Blues, I thought for me, was obviously Bolduc, but then you get a really young and hopefully some pretty good potential in Logan Mailloux. But we don't know. There's a lot to prove with him. So, the absence of Bolduc, I think, Chris, may be the kind of one of the probably more question marks with that. Because yes, you get a guy like Suter who may be a center for you, but Bolduc was such a great third line center and so important to your team that was sort of developing into, I thought, a very good young forward. Then you get this guy now more experienced in the center, and then you have a guy like Logan Mailloux who's now proven himself on the defense. So you as a former defenseman can know, like Logan Mailloux, what can we expect from a guy like him in the absence with Bolduc?
Yeah, you have to give to get, and big right shot defensemen don't grow on trees, and when you get an opportunity to get them, they're a lot of times they're costly, and so they'll miss Bolduc, but I think they needed to shore up their back end. They needed to get some youth back there. They needed to continue to develop some prospects and bring along some players. They were getting a little older back there, and moved. Letty's moved on, so they really needed some guys in the pipeline. That could go above, whether play in the top four at some point, and I think that's the vision they have for this kid, is that he's going to play in the top four. So, but it's going to take time. I think people have to understand, I'm a firm believer that a defenseman does not find out who they really are until after they play 300 games in the league. Some guys, the Quinn Hugheses and the Cale Makars of the world, those guys beat that number because they're who they are. But ultimately, as you look at an NHL defenseman, that's why Broberg, again, I think he's played 180 games in the league. He's still developing. So you have some of these guys that are still maturing and developing, and you see snippets of the types of player that they can be, but you want to see that on a consistent basis. And, I think we saw that in the second half from Philip Broberg. And I think you're going to want to see that from Logan Mailloux, where you see him come in and, they'll, I would imagine, take their time with him and try to put him in situations to succeed and develop and gain his confidence and grow his confidence. But once they kind of step into that, I think players start to earn ice time. Players start to earn opportunities. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, definitely, Chris. And I was going to ask for our last question here, just post-career. You've been all over the map. You've been doing a lot post-NHL career, to say the least. And I wanted to ask, you were in a advisory type of role with Florida from 2017 to 2020. We've seen you on NHL broadcasts. You started a whiskey company. You're in a luxury travel company with your wife. Like, you've been doing a lot. And I think we want to know, fans want to know, what's next for Chris Pronger and the next year or so. Where can we expect to see you? We'd love to see you. So can you provide some context on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you'll see me on Blues telecasts. I'm going to do some more Blues games this year. I don't know how many yet, but we're working on that this week. I do have a book coming out in April.
Okay.
So be ready for more to come on that. Be following my social media. Be following along. I'll be talking about that. It doesn't come out till April, but we got a nice long build up here. There'll be some juicy nuggets in that one, and I've been doing a lot of keynote speaking, performance coaching, things like that for businesses and leadership teams and people of that nature. Just kind of talking about culture and how to be a difference maker within your organization, within your business, and kind of leveling up and taking your game and your skill set to the next level.
Yeah, and then your wife came out with a new book.
She dropped her book today. Yeah, it just came out today. Okay. Super Well. If you go on Amazon and Google Super Well, or Amazon and type in Super Well, you don't need to Google it. You're already on Amazon. Go on Amazon and type in Super Well, and her book will come up.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing a lot, and I don't really know how you manage it, Chris. But I mean, the book, by the way, I never knew that was happening. So that's going to be a very fun read. So just more about just a lot about your career and culture, identity. What is it about?
No, it's part memoir, part life lessons gleaned from my childhood to my career to now post playing, and kind of the journey and kind of what I think people can learn from my journey and the mistakes and the victories and the championships and the everything in between, and how I think that translates to the everyday person reading the book, and they can put their shoes in my feet and be like, wow, that was something that I went through the same thing, or I had those questions about myself or about certain situations, and this is how he dealt with it. Oh, maybe I want to try that. There's a lot of different things like that in the book that a lot of questions, a lot of I'll walk through different situations, and then I'll ask a lot of different questions as to what the reader might be facing to get them thinking about it and try to help them continue to develop themselves.
Well, maybe not 16 surgeries in an NHL Hall of Fame to follow it up.
Correct.
Definitely some, I'm sure, great lessons, Chris.
Correct.
Well, we so much appreciate you for coming on. I mean, this is great. And learning about all your career and all the fun little tidbits along the way. What a great, awesome NHL career. But I know so much more to come with you with broadcasting and this book and all this great stuff for you.
Lots coming. Social media, don't worry. During the season, I'll be all over Twitter, just ripping people left and right.
It's a great place for that.
Good.
Oh my God.
Boy, is it ever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of keyboard tough guys out there.
Oh yeah.
We have our experience.
We're one of them. Yeah.
Have to be critical. Get the clicks.
Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Well, thanks, Chris, for coming on. We really appreciate your time, and good luck this season. And hopefully we can bring home something this year.
Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know.
TikTok. Time will tell.
I know. And we're so excited for hockey season. Oh my gosh. Can't wait for it to come up in the next few weeks here. I know you probably are too. Yeah. All right, Chris. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, Chris.